They were never supposed to touch a human woman. They were built to watch, nothing more. But somewhere between the sky and the soil, a handful of celestial guardians broke a law older than mankind itself, and gave birth to something the earth was never built to hold. By the time their commander found out, it was already too late. Above the surface of a young and restless earth, in a controlled chamber humming with light, Enlil stood over a map that would not sit still. It was a projection, a living grid of the human world stitched together from 1,000 fires. Villages, trails, rivers lined with movement. And every single day the pattern grew denser, faster, harder to predict. Enlil watched it in silence for a long moment. Then he made a decision that would unravel everything. Bring them to me, he said, his voice cutting through the chamber. Every Igigi left on this world. Within the hour, they stood before him, rows of them, armor catching the pale light overhead. These were beings who had spent generations underground, hauling gold out of the dark. You could still see it in the way they carried themselves, shoulders set for weight that was no longer there. Enlil walked the length of the formation, studying them. Your work changes today, he said. You will not go back into the mines. A ripple moved through the ranks, relief, disbelief, maybe both. One of them, a commander, stepped forward. Then what do you require of us? Enlil's answer was short. You will watch. He let the words sit there before he kept walking. Mankind is no longer simple, he continued. They build. They learn faster than we accounted for. They are beginning to connect with each other in ways we did not design. He stopped at the center of the hall and turned to face them fully. From this day, you are no longer Igigi. You are watchers. That is your title. That is your purpose. And with that single sentence, an entire class of beings was reborn, pulled out of the dirt and handed the sky instead. They didn't know yet that it would destroy them. Enlil laid out the rules plainly. Track every shift in human behavior. Report every change, nothing more. One watcher, still trying to understand the shape of his new role, asked the obvious question. So we shape them.
Great Enlil, should we guide humanity?
You do not touch what they become, you observe.
Interference is forbidden.
Another pressed further. And if they exceed what we expect of them, Enlil's eyes narrowed. Then I will decide what happens next, not you. Before dismissing them, he added one final restriction, the one that would matter most. You will not speak to one another while among them. You are to remain outside their world completely. Watch it, never enter it. And so they spread out across the earth, stationed on ridgelines, cliff edges, the high places overlooking every growing settlement below. No more darkness, no more chains. Just open sky, distance, and an endless human world unfolding beneath their feet. At first, it felt like freedom. For a while, the assignment held their attention. They watched humans rise before dawn, work the fields, build shelters that grew sturdier with each passing season. They watched people solve problems no one had taught them to solve. But repetition wears down even immortal patience. One watcher, stationed above a quiet valley, found himself staring at the same routine for the 100th time. The same footpaths, the same fires, the same small motions repeating themselves into eternity. They repeat what they already know, he muttered to no one. Why does it take me a decade to notice one difference? He wasn't alone in the thought. Across the world, in isolated posts with no one to talk to, boredom curdled into something closer to resentment. Then one evening, a handful of watchers broke the one rule that mattered most. They gathered. On a rocky overlook above a cluster of villages, 3 of them stood in the fading light, human fires flickering far below, unaware they were being discussed. I know the order, one said quietly. No contact, no conversation, but what is the point of any of this? We watch, we record, nothing changes for us. Another turned toward him uneasy. The command hasn't changed, we don't have another option. Then what are we exactly? The first pressed. What is our place in any of this? A third watcher, lower still, leaned in. Remember the mines? We rebelled once, and Enlil solved it by creating a replacement workforce. Maybe if we push again, he does the same, builds something to take our place. Or, he paused, we demand passage home, back to Nibiru. They agreed in secret to bring their grievance to Enlil directly. They had no idea how badly that meeting would go. The delegation crossed into Enlil's chamber, the glowing map of humanity still shifting behind him. He turned before they'd even finished approaching. We have done exactly as instructed, the lead watcher said. We've tracked every change, reported everything. Continue, Enlil said, arms folded. We stand above them and do nothing else. We're asking for more. Let us guide their development.
Approach.
You were never given that authority, Enlil said, his tone hardening instantly. The Watcher pushed anyway. Then at least let us speak to one another. The silence is unbearable. Nothing about this task ever changes. Your silence, Enlil said, stepping closer, is the task. A second Watcher broke in, more desperate now. Then release us entirely. Send us home. This world runs fine without us standing over it. The room seemed to drop several degrees. You speak, Enlil said slowly, as though that choice belongs to you. We worked the mines, the first Watcher shot back. We were promised something better. Instead, we stand here purposeless. Everything has changed, Enlil said. You are here because I placed you here. Then we stand here for nothing. You stand, Enlil said, exactly where you are needed. The Watcher's fists clenched, and if we refuse, Enlil moved closer, and when he spoke again, his voice had lost all patience. Then you will belong nowhere.
You knew
not
the
on this
consequence
world.
of defying the covenant,
Not on the one you're
Watcher.
so desperate to return
Now
to.
you will learn what it means to face
total,
me.
absolute silence. Enlil straightened, already turning back to his projections. Each of you will be reassigned, alone, separated from one another permanently. No further gatherings, no further requests. He paused. You will obey this order completely, and you will not entertain any more ideas like this one again. He believed distance would end the problem. He had no idea he was about to make it infinitely worse. Scattered and isolated, each Watcher took up a solitary post above a distant settlement, with no companions and no relief from the monotony that had started this entire mess. And in that isolation, something shifted. Without each other to talk to, they started paying attention to the one thing Enlil never accounted for, the humans themselves. One Watcher, posted above a riverside village, found his attention drifting towards something he couldn't quite name. He watched people move freely, no orders, no assigned tasks, just choice. Laughter carrying up from the fires at night, people deciding on their own what to do with their time. They live without command, he thought. They choose everything I never could. And slowly, across the world, other isolated Watchers felt the exact same pull. It didn't take long before their focus narrowed even further, landing, again and again, on the human women. One Watcher fixated on a young woman who walked the same path to the river each evening, cloth in hand, kneeling by the water to wash it in the same unhurried rhythm. He watched longer than he should have. Another, miles away, watched a group of women seated together, weaving each other's hair into intricate patterns, their voices low and easy. Distance didn't cool the fascination. If anything, it deepened it. Watcher after Watcher found themselves thinking less like observers and more like something else entirely. One night under a low moon, a Watcher finally did what none of them were ever supposed to do. He left his post and walked down into the village. The woman by the river heard him before she saw him. She turned, and instead of running, she simply looked at him.
Who are you?
You're standing here alone,
I am a Watcher.
he said, his voice
What do you
unsteady.
see?
And yet you're the one who
threads of
came
your
closer,
fate.
she answered.
time is near.
I've watched you a
You
long
must awaken
time,
the
he
others.
admitted.
I am
Then you
afraid.
already knew I'd be here tonight. I know more than that. He said nothing
I have
else.
watched you for
He
a long
stepped back
time.
into the shadows and
Come with me.
disappeared, but the line had already been crossed,
Yes.
and both of them knew it. Elsewhere, a different Watcher approached a woman stepping out of her shelter for the night air. She studied him for a long moment. You don't move like the others, she said, because I'm not like them. Then why are you here? Because I wanted to talk to you. Small conversations like these began appearing everywhere, quiet, hidden, deliberate. And they didn't stay small for long. What started as stolen conversations became something far harder to walk back. The Watchers stopped waiting for cover of night. They stopped keeping to the outskirts. They moved into the villages, the same paths, the same homes, the same lives they'd once only observed from a ridge above.
Your presence
And it kept
here has brought us
escalating.
hope, Watcher.
Some Watchers
Your
weren't
presence
content
here
with a
has
single
brought us hope,
connection.
Watcher. Your hope is
One,
not
caught between
misplaced,
two women
villager.
in the same village, simply refused to choose, moving between both, hiding nothing anymore, because by that point there was nothing left to protect. Every rule Enlil had given them had already been broken. The only thing left was the consequence. By a low fire one night, a woman rested her hand against a Watcher's arm. I was only meant to observe you, he said
know.
quietly. Then why haven't you
don't have
left?
to face it alone.
Because I don't want
The
to.
whispers of your
That
heart
single
guide you.
choice, repeated
this
across the
truly the
world
only
by
path?
dozens of Watchers,
Your world
hundreds
will
of times
flourish.
over,
We will
was
wait
about
for
to
you.
change the
Peace
fate
will
of the
come.
entire planet. Within months, the signs were impossible to miss. Women across different settlements noticed changes in their bodies they couldn't
you all
explain.
right?
Confusion turned into whispered conversations by the water's edge.
I don't know, it just
Something is
started
growing
hurting.
inside me, one woman admitted softly.
Did you see the smoke
I feel
rising
it
near the
too,
mountains?
another
The gods
answered.
protect us from what comes
High
down.
above, the Watchers saw
I
it
am
happening in
afraid.
real time, and they understood immediately what it meant. These children would not be ordinary, and when Enlil discovered the truth, there would be no mercy left in him. He was already furious that his repeated attempts to control human population growth had failed again and again. This, an entire generation of forbidden births, would be the final straw. They knew exactly what was coming, and they let it happen anyway. The first child was born inside a crowded shelter, the air thick with tension, as the mother strained through labor far more violent than anything the other women had witnessed before.
What is that?
Outside, the father, a watcher who had given up everything to be there, stood frozen, listening to every sound. "This can't be undone," he whispered to himself, right before the cry split the night air. When the woman finally stepped outside holding the newborn, everyone went silent. The child's body was already too large, its limbs pushed and strained with a strength no infant should possess. "He's growing," she said, staring down at her son. "Even now." More births followed in the weeks after, everyone following the same terrifying pattern, rapid, unnatural growth. Strength that outpaced age by years. And with that strength came appetite, an appetite the land was never built to feed. One of these children, still barely old enough to walk properly,
They are
reached into
eating
a communal
everything.
food store
What will
and
we
simply
do
took
when winter
everything
comes?
inside it.
The crops are ruined.
That was meant for the
we
whole
have nothing
village,
left.
a man snapped. The child didn't even pause. Fields were trampled without a second thought. Storage pits, painstakingly filled over weeks, were emptied overnight. Livestock fled in terror from footsteps that shook the ground beneath them. These were the Nephilim, and their hunger for human resources mirrored, almost exactly, the same reckless hunger their fathers had once felt for human women. Neither one had any restraint left. Then it stopped being about food. One giant, forcing his way between two shelters, simply didn't fit and didn't slow down. Wood cracked. Clay walls buckled and collapsed in a cloud of dust while families scrambled outside, dragging their children to safety. A woman stood in front of the wreckage that used to be her home. "We built this with our own hands," she said quietly, "and they destroyed it without even noticing," another answered beside her. The same devastation repeated across settlement after settlement. People began banding together out of pure fear, no longer safe, scattered, and alone. "We can't stay here," one man said, standing before his terrified group. Fires burned longer into the night. No one felt safe anymore. And then the mines went silent. Workers stopped showing up. First a handful, then entire crews. The paths that had once carried endless lines of laborers toward the Abzu sat completely empty, tools abandoned exactly where they'd been dropped. "We can't leave our families unprotected," one worker said, refusing to return. "If we go back," another replied, "we come home to nothing left standing." For the first time since mankind's creation, the system Enlil had spent generations perfecting ground to a complete halt, and the beings responsible for keeping that order intact were the very ones who had destroyed it. Standing together for what might have been the first time in years, the Watchers finally looked at the devastation they had caused. "This was never supposed to happen," one said, his voice hollow. "We did this," another answered. "Our own once tore this world apart. He wasn't wrong." Everything Enlil had built, labor, order, control, had collapsed under the exact weight of what the Watchers had unleashed. Humanity, created for one single purpose, had stopped working entirely. And meanwhile, gold shipments back to Nibiru had stalled completely, while giants continued tearing through everything in their path. When Enlil finally saw the full scope of what had happened, he wasn't enraged. He was something colder, something far more dangerous, disappointed. Because disappointment from a being like Enlil only ever meant one thing. He was done trying to manage this world. He was ready to start over completely. What Enlil decided next would not just reshape mankind. It would very nearly erase it.